Robert Lee Neblett, better known as Bob, was born in Martin, Tennessee on November 9, 1895. Bob had 4 siblings, 3 men and 1 woman. Bob's youth, like most poor people, was difficult. His mother's death when he was 7 put extra strain on his father, who was a carpenter. At the age of 17 Bob left home. In November 1917 he joined the U.S. Army. He served a year and 16 days abroad in World War I. He returned home in June 1919. He got a job in Murray, Kentucky, and got married for the first time. His marriage lasted 7 years, until his wife's untimely death. It was during this period of Bob's life that he became acquainted with a breed of dog. And that he would own, fight and create for the next 58 years of his life. The first dog Bob had was a puppy he got through his brother-in-law. The dog's name was Buck, born in 1922. Son of Black Jack of Tudor and female Nell of Cunningham. Bob always had many stories to tell about Buck's skill. But Buck never took part in a professional fight, he just had convincing tests and chain fights. After an hour and 4 minutes, Bob stopped the fight, and Billy won, leaving Bob somewhat confused as to what went wrong. Bob was so intrigued that he pitted the two against each other again a few months later. It was a repeat of the first test, with Bob catching the whipping Buck a little more convincingly. Bob then sent Billy to a dogman in Louisiana, as he lost everything he owned in the Great Depression of the 1930s. In 1933, Bob moved from Kentucky to Detroit, Michigan. That's when he started working in the auto industry. He moved away, and married a second time. Bob bought and acquired the Bulldogs, which would form the basis for the Gameness line of dogs, which the Neblett line produced. Bob's bloodline was primarily a Colby bloodline, and came from 2 bulldogs. The more famous of the 2 being champion Neblett Bucky McCoy. The other male was a dark brindle that Bob bought when he was a puppy. He bought it from Joe Curvino. In honor of his father, he named the dog Neblett Braddock Jr. Bob championed Bucky McCoy. He was a defensive fighter, and very smart. In addition to being an excellent finishing dog. He won 8 professional fights. Bucky's toughest fight was his 6th fight, which was against Black Diamond. Black Diamond was a 2-time winner, and belonged to Cranker. Bucky stopped him at the ring in 1 hour and 57 minutes in August 1938. Bob Braddock Jr., son of male Armitage by Curvino Braddock, who was a 14-time winner. His mother was the female from Curvino to by Blue. Bucky was Bob's favorite due to the deep gameness. Braddock Jr. had won 2 very tough fights. Bob booked a fight with him, at catch weights. It was against a red dog owned by a detective in Detroit. Bob had already seen the big red dog fight. Although the red dog was much larger than the Braddock Jr. Bob believed that the red dog lacked gameness. The fight took place in May 1939. Braddock Jr. fighting from the bottom throughout the fight, holding the bigger 10-pound dog. The contest finally came to 1 hour and 37 minutes. Bob, a little worried about Braddock Jr. being out for so long. He asked the owner of the red dog if he would accept a draw. The Detroit detective nodded quickly, and began to shake Bob's hand. Bob at this point in the story shook his head saying, "I already thought several times that he had won, because of several scratches that had already happened. But that old man came back strong every time when I could get Braddock Jr. to let him go." Bob had several other bulldogs, who were exceptional in skill, one being a brindle one-eyed dog named Coronel. Colonel Bob the Dog by Harry Clark. Colonel won 6 professional fights, all showing class, skill and gameness. The Colonel's last match was against the dogman, Paul Sweeney, who held a very special place in Bob's heart. Paul Sweeney put an unbelievable number of dogs to fight. He went unbeaten over a period of 11 to 12 years. Old Dog Colonel, who was 6.5 years old at the time of the fight, ended Mr. Sweeney's long winning streak. The competition took place near Detroit, and lasted just over an hour. $1,000 was bet on the fight, which was a high amount in 1939. The worst Bob could say about the Colonel is that he never sired a single pup. Some other dogs that Bob bred who thought they were way above average were two dogs. A male named Dusty and a female named Patsy. Dusty was a red dog with a black face, son of Neblett Black Mike and champion female Dolly, by Bucky McCoy and Pearson, which spawned W.C. Roper's red-nosed dogs. Although Dusty had never fought, Bob made sure he was tested so hard. Dusty bred dogs of Gameness. The bitch Patsy was considered by Bob the best female he ever had. Patsy was a dark brindle female with a white ring around her neck. Patsy is the daughter of male Neblett Black Bobo, who was the son of champion Bucky McCoy. Patsy's dam was Neblett Little Cookie, who was a closed Colby bitch that Bob bought from John Colby. When the subject of some dogmen was brought up in conversation, Bob always mentioned that Joe Corvino was by far the best dogman he personally knew. There were others that Bob kept mentioning, which was Cleveland's Charlie Tyler, Ohio's Paul Sweeney, Red Howell, Tennessee's Jim McKenzie, Fred Schroeder, and Al and Dick Cole. In late 1946, aged 51, Neblett moved from Detroit, Michigan to Neosho, Missouri. It was there that he bought land, set up a business and built his kennels. Bob didn't do any more fights for one reason or another, although he did release a dog, in a fun fight, against a well-known Kansas City dogman. This fight took place in Mississippi and lasted just over an hour. The dog Bob used was lost in the fight, and was owned and trained by Earl Skaggs. Bob said that if he had worked with the dog himself, or if the dog Skaggs had been in slightly better shape, he would have won this battle. Unlike many men, Bob Neblett always brought pit bulldogs into his life as a hobby. Because the business was something you ran or had to take care of. And it wasn't something you did for love. A feeling that Bob had and which he expressed with pride. It was that he couldn't have any other breed of dog. And he would probably never have a dog if he wasn't brave like the fighting dog. This statement was true in Bob's life. Through his dedication, which he has always shown to the breed. Evidence of Bob's dedication came in the quality of the bulldogs he bred. And along with the visual purity of Neblett's breeding, in pedigrees. Few men claim to have bred dogs 40 or 50 years ago. And that they will hand you a pedigree, with 75% of the dogs in that pedigree having the same prefix or last name on them. Bob was a man who did. On June 4, 1980, early in the morning, while mowing the lawn, Bob Neblett had a heart attack, and died a few hours later at the age of 85. I do not promote, support or condone any violations of the Animal Welfare Act 1976. Or any other local, state and federal law. I am not affiliated with dogfighting in any way, or in any way. I am simply a pet owner and enthusiast of the American Pit Bull Terrier, and the great history and legacy passed down through the generations. I believe it is important to know where we came from to know where we are going. Articles posted are strictly for historical and educational purposes. I do not necessarily represent the opinions expressed in these articles. My name is Rodolpho Luiz, and I invite everyone to enjoy the knowledge of this wonderful breed. Sign up so you don't miss the next video. God bless you all. I went.